So many of you may have seen the considerable price explosion that's happening today. Seemingly, we're getting out of crypto winter. The prices for Bitcoin is up about 14% for 24 hours. And then BCH is up like 25%. And, Ether is up. Ethereum's, doing well. And Litecoin and all these altcoins, most of them are pegged on the exchange with Bitcoin. So the fact that they go up is not really surprising because they would have to, readjust, and it's a whole, it's a whole deal. So they're linked. But I was going to talk a little bit about, why. I think one of the reasons that we're seeing, and that they talked about at the crypto convention that I went to in Los Angeles, is that you're getting more and more institutional money that's entering the space. They had some institutional buyers that have been on record as buying a few $100 million worth of Bitcoin across like 2 or 3 exchanges. And the difficulty apparently was that they went in hard, and they went in at the same time. Most people, when they buy, let's say, for example, a lot of shares of stock, they'll taper them over, days or even weeks in order to, not get a lot of excitement about the stock, so they'll have to pay more for them. Well, that's pretty much exactly what they did on, the most recent purchase. They went and, bought all of them within an hour, is the way that I understand it. They had some people there that were familiar with, I guess, the investment bank that was actually involved with it. And they said, yeah, they messed up. They completely slammed it. So I'm not sure if they had some sort of option coverage on Deribit or quite what they were doing or why they did what they did. But I think that today we'll find out exactly what happened, because today's bounce was even more than that bounce. And one of the reasons that I find it interesting, because, Binance got hacked for, tens of millions, and there's still some instability, but you are getting more and more institutional money into this space. There is actually an investment bank, Founders Bank, which is a crypto bank that Binance owns 5% of, and their big news for the week, or it was fairly recently, was that they took on one of the executives of Deutsche Bank. And that's significant because when he worked at Deutsche Bank, which is one of the most blue chip, investment banks / retail banks out there, that he headed the institutional investing area. So all of the people that are in the institutional investing realm, whether they're managing CalPERS or they're managing Yale or Harvard's funds or whatever they're investing, it's a princely sum of money. And at the conference, some of the institutional investors were actually talking about Forrester's, and some other companies were having reports that would say, if you have an endowment, you should allocate, 5% to Bitcoin, just like, all these other big billionaires like Mark Cuban and some other ones are saying it's a good idea to put 5 to 10% in, because if nothing happens, then at least, you lost 5 to 10%. But if you get a huge pop, then it could lift the entire performance of your entire portfolio, whereas you may get a few percent from your bonds and from your stocks and a few other assets that you do have in there, art and real estate. If you have 10% that doubles, then no matter what happens, that's 10% onto your whole portfolio. So it makes sense, and it's something definitely to consider. I think that as we get more and more people, the more credible bankers that are in the space, you'll get more and more legitimacy, because very likely the new executive coming from Deutsche Bank wants the founders or his bank to do well. And in order to do that, he probably is able to give some calls to his old friends, the old institutional buddies that he's had, that he was interacting with over at Deutsche Bank, and say, crypto's not so bad. Like, take a look at it. Here's the performance. Here's what's going on. It's much more stable than November and December of 2017 when the ICO craze was bringing all sorts of like scum to the space and gave it a bad name and gave it some bad press in Wall Street Journal and New York Times and all that. So definitely the crypto winter is pushing off a lot of the people that were in the space. And we're now down to a better crowd that's more technically minded and tech savvy and are looking for the use cases. And some of them are even profitable and have some dApps and applications that back whatever their token is. So it may be the beginning of the run-up. Another article on Cointelegraph was talking about how all these firms are seeing a return to 20,000 by 2021. And entirely foreseeable. We're just about the midway at 7, and it was like midway of 5 a few weeks ago. So it is entirely possible through the magic of compounding and the amount of time, year and a half between then and now. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on. But I think a market that's similar to the crypto market right now was the whole peer-to-peer lending group. You saw individuals that were leaving the Fed and leaving government agencies and going in there, the most prominent of whom was Larry Summers, who was Secretary of Treasury, who also was president of Harvard for a number of years before he stepped down. And so he is like uber connected. And when he jumped onto Lending Club as the board of directors, he brought some serious legitimacy to that position. And he had all the contacts in the world through his connections at obviously the Harvard Fund, which is the largest university fund, or others that can bring some credibility to that platform. And it really did. I mean, their loans have exploded and they're still doing well, such that if anyone comes in with a lower credit rating, they have to pay more. Those get sucked up really quickly because the due diligence that Lending Club does do, along with Prosper, is pretty exhaustive. So a lot of investors are comfortable going in there with their cash. And I'll even see on very conservative websites that people say, here's how you invest, 25 grand or whatever of your portfolio into Lending Club, which you wouldn't see a few years ago. So when more and more people that actually print the fiat, just like Larry Summers as Secretary of Treasury did, are going into these spaces like peer-to-peer, I think it's coming to the type of threshold where people will be coming into the crypto space, and then they'll bring their legitimacy, their connections, their education, and their gravitas of who they are, and that'll all bleed off into the companies that they're associated with, and they'll brush off into the organizations that they're a part of. So it can only bode well for the crypto space. That's really how I feel about Facebook's coin. I mean, billions of people are on Facebook, and for so many of those, Bitcoin is the only experience that they have in terms of the crypto space. So, for Facebook, one of the most ubiquitous social media 2.0 companies, to be issuing a coin that, from all accounts, will be native to the Instagram and Facebook platforms, that level of adoption could bode well and help all crypto in the process. So that'll be interesting development. When I was at the Crypto Investing Summit, Tim Draper said he was actually going to go to a meeting with Mark Zuckerberg to discuss it, because for whatever reason, they're raising money for the coin, despite the fact that they have a considerable amount of cash in the bank and their holdings and all over the world offices of Facebook. So definitely interesting developments there. But I really don't think this is the end. I mean, I don't know that it's the end of crypto winter, but it definitely is things moving in the right direction. And it'll be interesting to see the technicals, if it keeps going up or if there's a correction or what kind of points of strength there are. And for that, you may have to look forward, because I'm going to bring on some of my friends that do technical trading. And that'll be interesting to see. It's not the sole consideration. You can't trade exclusively on technicals. Believe me, I've tried. But it's definitely a consideration, because people will put in orders into the order book that are large, like they're whales. So you can say, okay, well, this position looks fairly fortified, and you'd have to make a significant swing for all these to be exhausted. Yeah, they can take it off and, remove it from the order book, but a lot of these companies are not necessarily bots, so they just kind of leave it on there. So it's something to consider. So Bitcoin, altcoins, keep going up. We're in favor of it. You're going places. We like that.